The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
She thinks I'm gonna kill her, and I want to kill her.
The defendant viciously and savagely unleashed his full fury and hatred towards his mother.
And I just seen an arm come out and grab her by the shoulder. She said, "They go in my hair, you're hurting me."
I'm not a psychopath, I'm not this murderer. I'm just trying to peacefully leave or peacefully coexist.
Colin Griffith says he's not a psychopath, but his actions and his demeanor may say otherwise. A criminologist is taking us into the mind of this teen murder defendant as we're getting ready to go back into the courtroom. Plus, Natalie Cochran now asking for mercy after being found guilty of murdering her husband. The lead prosecutor on the case joins us live to talk about the plea deal that she turned down. And also this hour, we're spotlighting Monica Sementeilli's secret life of lust, greed, and betrayal. We're talking about whether the defense's strategy will make her a free woman. And A$AP Rocky's accusers getting ready to face some tough questions today. But the biggest question, did anybody see Rihanna? It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. Are you ready to have some coffee and some court? It's that time of the morning where we get it going. Grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statements. No breaks. Some people in the criminal justice system deserve no breaks. And Colin Griffith is one of them. My friends, I learned when I was a prosecutor that the great majority of defendants are good people who just made bad choices or bad mistakes. The other, very small percentage of people are the ones that you really have to worry about when you're a prosecutor. These are the people that you have to protect society from. These are the dangerous, evil, very bad people. That's what you have to be concerned with the most when you're a prosecuting attorney. Now, from the evidence I see in this case in Florida, I see that 17-year-old Colin Griffith is one of those very dangerous people that society needs to be seriously worried about. In my opinion, he deserves no breaks. What the state says that he did to his own mother and the way they say he did it is reprehensible. And do you see the self-defense theme here? The shooting of his father and the stabbing of his mother were both done out of necessity, so he claims? Give me a break. In my opinion, this kid is a threat to anybody around him. If he's so savage as to take the lives of the two people who gave him life, the way that officials say that he did, there is no rehabilitating him. He might be 17, but this behavior to me is a preview of what's to come if he's not locked up. And if I was that prosecutor, I'd want to throw away the key. That's my opening statement on this Thursday. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
The jury verdict is as follows. We, the jury on the issues, joined unanimously find the following. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree.
Now, Natalie Cochran's mercy phase, that's what they call it in West Virginia, begins at 9 a.m. Eastern time. The jury's going to make a recommendation after hearing the evidence, and the lead prosecutor on the case is going to join us live here on Opening Statements shortly. Now, in California, I also want to tell you that the state's case is going to resume in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Sementilli. That one's going to start up at noon. We'll have it for you. And also in California, in the same courthouse, we've got the alleged victim in the A$AP Rocky case returning to the stand. That's right. We're going to see the cross-examination of A$AP Relly. That's going to start up at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Now, let's get to your top story this morning, the deadly son murder trial, the case that has everybody talking. Defendant Collin Griffith is on trial. The prosecution painting a picture of this kid that he viciously, and I mean viciously, unleashed hatred upon his mother, stabbing her in the neck so that the knife pierced all the way through. The defense, though, claims the family was very close. They took cruises together. But when there was trouble, they say that Colin's mother, Kathy, was the instigator.
While she bled, the defendant was there and watched as the blood came out of the huge hole in her neck. You're going to hear that he was there as he watched the blood and the life drain from her body.
You also hear that Kathy is not exactly reliable in what she says. You'll hear this from her own mother, that she makes things up, that she is unpredictable, she is erratic, and goes into rages.
My friends, what were you thinking after you watched these opening statements in this case? I had some very strong thoughts, and I'm sure our next guest does too. She's an expert in the field of criminology. She's also an author and professor at St. Thomas University. Dr. Debbie Goodman is on the program today. Good morning, Dr. Debbie. Could we start with your first impressions, please? I know it's early on, but we know both sides shared their respective stories. Tell us what you were thinking, if you would.
Absolutely. Good morning, Julie. Always a pleasure to join you, and what an outstanding opening statement you have for this case, as you always do. But, you know, what really resonates, your terminology, no breaks, in 100% agreement. This case, if there's such a thing as beyond brutal, I would put it in that category. So savage and heinous. So first, Julie, we start with what the category of crime is. We call it familicide, when a family member kills a family member. And then we get even more, level of specificity here, whereby we have the death of father, that's the patricide. And now in front of us, of course, for discussion is the death of the mother, the matricide. So Julie, no doubt in my mind, Colin Griffith is indeed a psychopath. Why did he kill his mother? Because he felt he can. And I'll use the word can, if you will, as an acronym for the behaviors I think he displays. The C for control and challenge. You know, these people, Julie, him specifically, they don't want to be controlled. Rather, they want to be in control. They don't like to be challenged. If anybody challenges them, any authority figure at school or a parent, they will fight back. And the A in can for agitation, annoyance, anger. Psychopaths are very easily, readily annoyed and agitated, and they will lash out in a very heinous, angry manner. And then the N for narcissism. It's all about them. And if somebody's challenging them, they will win.
Wow, this is fascinating. I'm taking notes, Dr. Debbie. The acronym CAN we can apply to this case, and this young man, this 17-year-old on trial here. I want to show you a clip, Dr. Debbie, that goes to the first C that you taught us about, the control and the challenging. Let's take a look at a neighbor who testified and said she saw Colin Griffith's mom, Kathy, being dragged by him by the hair. He was pulling her by the hair to go back inside the house before the stabbing.
When the defendant grabbed her hair, what did she say?
She said, "Let go of my hair. You're hurting me."
And were you inside or outside?
I was inside in my living room.
So it must have been loud enough, obviously, for you to be able to hear that.
Yes.
And what did the defendant do to her next?
Then he just reached and got hold to her, and he opened the door and pulled her in.
Was that the last you ever saw?
That's the last I saw.
Oh, my. Dr. Debbie, this evidence is what you were just saying, does it not? The exertion of the control over one's victim.
100%, Julie. And, you know, it's heartbreaking, even as moms, to think that potentially one's own child could be capable of this. But, you know, as I look at him, just his appearance, he really now reminds me of Nicholas Cruz, you know, a case I was involved in here in Florida, 17 decedents at a high school. And he also reminds me of an Ethan Crumley in Michigan with the 4 innocent victims at Oxford High School. So again, for this individual to have so heinously, brutally murdered his own mother, but I can assure you, Julie, he felt that he was warranted in doing it. You know, he almost went to war, really, with his own mother. He felt he was wronged if and when she was to divulge any information, perhaps about the death of his father. And this anger and agitation just grew. And he ultimately took the revenge in such an enraged and outraged manner that it's just beyond, again, I would say, brutal. But even in describing the psychopath, they lack remorse. There's zero empathy for what they've done, and they feel they are justified in their actions.
Dr. Debbie, this is fascinating hearing you speak about this. Curious, when it comes to somebody being a psychopath, is this something that they're born that way? Do they become that way? Would you kind of take us to school on that, please?
Sure. I believe, Julie, it's more of a learned behavior. You know, as parents, we're monitoring our children's behavior. We certainly want them to do well in school. We want them to be socialized. But usually there are early indicators. And even when I speak to parents at the PTA meetings and such, and they know what I do, and sometimes they have questions, the bottom line is if something doesn't look right, sound right, feel right about one's own child, that's the parental duty and responsibility to get the child help. And sometimes, you know, parents just dismiss it, or like we say, the ostrich with the head in the sand, thinking, well, not my kid and not my household and not my issue. But I believe that psychopathy does begin at early stages. And if not addressed, it grows and it mushrooms into this absolutely horrific type of conduct that leads to death.
Right, exactly what you taught us about, patricide, matricide here, familicide, with this 17-year-old taking out both of his parents and saying both times that it was self-defense. Dr. Debbie Goodman, we're going to have to bring you back as this case progresses. There's so much more I know we want to get to, but we're going to take with us all the lessons you gave us today, the CAN acronym, and that Colin Griffith is indeed a psychopath. Dr. Debbie Goodman, thank you so much. Give our best to your wonderful students. We'll see you soon. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, here's what we've got.
She's guilty. We knew that all along, but until 12 good citizens of Raleigh County determined that, you don't know the outcome. There can be zero doubt in anybody's mind that Mr. Cochran died from that incident.
The lead prosecutor in Natalie Cochran's case is joining us live here on Opening Statements. Next, we're going to talk about the plea deal that he offered her that she turned down. Not so smart, was that? Now, coming up later in the show, we're talking about Riri showing her support in the courtroom for A$AP Rocky, but nobody saw her. So we're all wondering, are we going to see the pop superstar today? We'll be right back.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Welcome back. Now for what's tipping the scales of justice. We're heading into the second phase of Natalie Cochran's case. She was convicted of the first-degree murder of her husband, Michael.
We, the jury on the issues, joined unanimously find the following. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree.
Now the trial enters into what's known in West Virginia as the mercy phase, where the jury will make a recommendation whether Cochran will serve a life sentence with or without parole. Her parents and her kids are expected to speak on her behalf, and so we're wondering what other testimony may tip the scales. Want to invite on now a very special guest to talk about what was offered to Natalie Cochran prior to going to trial. And that was a plea deal. Want to welcome in the lead prosecutor on the case, Mr. Tom Truman. Tom, good morning to you. And might I just start by saying congratulations on a job well done and a case very well tried by you and your colleagues.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you. And good morning to you.
Oh, certainly. Thank you. Tom, may I start with the plea offer that Natalie Cochran was not so smart to reject? What was that, please?
It's what you might call a Chinese restaurant menu, one from column A, one from column B. And it was basically geared to the time she would have to serve to become parole eligible. So one option was that with an effective sentence date of September 30th of 19, which is when she went on federal home incarceration, she would plead to the indictment, which would mean she'd be eligible for parole 15 years from that date. The second option was a plea to second-degree murder, which under the statute is a determiner, a single number between 10 and 40. And the defendant would have to serve 10 years to be parole eligible. But for that, she didn't get any credit for home incarceration time. It would be the date she reported to the Bureau of Prisons, which was May of 2021.
I see. Okay. Tom, thank you for that. We know she's already doing time for the Ponzi scheme, and so many of us were looking forward to seeing you cross-examine her when she would testify. We had gotten word that she would be, and then she was smart not to. Tell us, if you would, please, Tom, how you were preparing to cross her.
There was a mountain of electronic evidence, and it was text messages between the defendant and various people, including her husband. And the trail of deception she left provided us with that evidence, and we would have gone into a lot more detail than we did with Trooper Heinzman, who was our rebuttal witness. But basically, really on the fly, we converted what would have been questioning of her into questioning for Trooper Heinzman.
Understood. Thank you, Tom. Tell me, when we look forward to going back into the courtroom today and seeing what's presented, what is the state of West Virginia prepared to present to convince the jury to show her no mercy?
You will see some very strange court proceedings. This is an unusual procedure here. The judge is not even allowed to tell the jury what criteria they're to use. The jury is totally in charge and decides mercy or no mercy without any guidance. It's just whatever they decide. And so the testimony from the defense, I kind of have an idea of what they might say. But from our point of view, it'll be to show, you know, this defendant does not deserve mercy because of her conduct before and after Michael Cochran's death.
Right. Tom, tell me, what was the most challenging part of this prosecution for you in proving that Natalie Cochran did in fact poison her husband Michael with the insulin?
I think there's no one thing I can point to other than it was a substantial file, about 70,000 pages. And Ashley Acord and I really didn't have a whole lot of time to digest all that. We did the best we could, and we presented the best case we could. But that was probably the biggest hurdle we faced. It was a lot of stuff to boil down and make a presentable case. The original witness list for the state was 85 witnesses. And that was just totally unmanageable. So we pared it down to what we presented.
Sure, sure. I want to play a clip for you, please, Tom. This is from Natalie Cochran's defense lawyers yesterday speaking with Court TV and giving their reaction to the verdict.
I really have no idea what evidence this jury was listening to. I think that this is one of the cases where the defense, not having the burden of proof, proved its case, probably beyond a shadow of a doubt as to how, when, what, and why.
Tom, what's your reaction to hearing that?
I've spoken like a true defense attorney, and Matthew Victor is an extremely good defense attorney. But he, it's kind of a matter of, let's watch the birds and look over there. Because the focus of the case, from the state's perspective, was to really reverse engineer it from the time that Michael was taken to Raleigh General Hospital and go backwards. And the defense could never account for why this patient's blood glucose level in a non-diabetic was 21. How did they account for that? They didn't. And that, I thought that was fatal to the defense case.
Right. It sure was. It sure proved to be with your jury. Tom, I know you're a busy guy. We're going to have to let you get going. But before we do, is there anything you're able to share with our viewers who are just fascinated with trials, the court system? And we often say that what we see presented at trial in front of the court TV cameras isn't the whole story. Oftentimes, prosecutors can't bring in certain things, or the jury can't know about certain things for certain reasons. Is there anything you could share with us about this case that we may not otherwise know?
You know, I would love to stand here and tell you, here's the real backstory, but there really wasn't one. We presented probably every piece of relevant evidence that we could to prove her guilt. There was a suppressed fourth statement that she gave after she was incarcerated in the federal system, but all that was a lot of grousing and another version of what happened. I don't know if she couldn't keep track of what had happened, but we couldn't use that statement, and that's pretty much the only thing.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a little nugget. That's something, another statement of what occurred. According to defendant Natalie Cochran, who we're going to see here shortly. I want to say a big thank you to attorney Tom Truman, the Raleigh County, West Virginia prosecuting attorney. Thank you so much for your time and for the conversation this morning.
Thank you.
Take good care. When we come back here on Opening Statements, here's what's coming up.
Not only was the defendant having an affair with Baker, but they were also swinging with other people. Her older daughter, Jessica, who you'll hear from, found Baker sleeping in the defendant's bed.
We're spotlighting the secret life of defendant Monica Sementilli. And want to take you to Florida right now for a live look at the courtroom. Nothing happening just yet. But any minute now, the jury's going to be back to hear more of the deadly son murder trial.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
This morning, we're spotlighting the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for defendant Monica Sementilli. She's accused of being the mastermind behind the murder of her famous hairstylist husband, Fabio Sementilli. Prosecutors are alleging that Monica and her lover murdered Fabio in order to continue their lustful affair and then cash in on $1 million life insurance policy. More law enforcement witnesses and her former housekeeper are expected to all testify today. On Wednesday, we heard the defense's theory. Their theory is that Monica had an affair, but she was not involved in Fabio's murder. Let's take a quick look back together at both sides of the opening statements.
Lust, greed, betrayal. That's what this case is about. In December of 2015, the defendant began to take racquetball lessons from Baker. They exchanged emails December 1st, which you see here. This is approximately when they first met. You're also going to hear that Robert Baker was a registered sex offender. You're going to learn that the victim in this case was actually his stepdaughter from a prior marriage. You're also going to hear that the defendant sent over 300 videos and photographs, which included hundreds of naked photos of herself to Baker during the course of their affair. Not only was the defendant having an affair with Baker, but they were also swinging with other people. Her older daughter, Jessica, who you'll hear from, found Baker sleeping in the defendant's bed one morning.
You have not heard one piece of evidence, one text, one letter, one recorded call, one statement by Monica Sementeilli, or any indication that Monica Sementilli ever uttered a word about wanting her husband dead. Her sexuality, her choice, which some of us may disapprove of, to have an affair has nothing to do with wanting her husband dead.
All right, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about the defense theory that she's not a murderer, just a cheater. Let's bring in two high-profile attorneys on the show this morning, Michael J. Brown and John Phillips. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Michael, let me start with you, if I may, please. This defense theory, do you like it?
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, John. They have to go with what they have, and they have to concede, obviously, that they're having this affair because the evidence is overwhelming. But, you know, I'm listening to that opening statement, and the attorney is suggesting it has nothing to do with the murder. On the other hand, I would say it has everything to do with the murder. She needed to take her husband out of this world because she was in this affair. Apparently, her religious beliefs prevent her from getting a divorce. And there's a ton of money at the end of the rainbow as the beneficiary of this life insurance policy. So as we all know, John and you both know, the fact that you have a motive is never a necessary element. It's always something the jury wants to hear. So yeah, I think it's defense is doing what they have to do, but I think it's a very difficult case for them.
Yes, yes. And Michael, I love what you said there about how motive's not an element, even though a lot of people have that misconception. Thank you for that. And then you said how, but juries want to hear it. So juries want the story. And oh, are they getting a story in this one, as you two know. My goodness, some of this evidence that the jury is seeing about this affair, John Phillips, it makes so many of us wonder. We keep asking in our newsroom, why would she want to go to trial and let all this come out?
Yeah, I mean, you got to take the chance to try to not be convicted of murder, right? Or spend the rest of your life in a plea deal. But I can't wait to see what there's other people involved, is my understanding, and I can't see where they're gonna. I can't wait to see where they're gonna weigh in.
Right. So they're both kind of wild cards, right? Because we know the one guy, Robert Baker, he's the one she had the affair with, the love affair. So you would think maybe he'd have some more allegiance to her than the other guy who is just said to have been the knife-wielding man, the man who actually did the stabbing. His name is Christopher Austin. And so they're both set to testify. Michael J. Brown, how do you think this is going to go?
I think it's going to be great entertainment, Julie. Baker apparently is the one who was the boyfriend, and he apparently accepted responsibility. My understanding is he's going to take the stand and accept responsibility and disclaim all responsibility for Sementilli and say she wasn't involved. I don't think that's going to go well because the prosecutor has indicated that they have numerous different versions, including recorded statements, of this complicit discussion, how he's going to take responsibility and absolve her of responsibility. That's a trouble. That's a problem. Now, again, I'm never going to second guess the defense attorneys because they best know how to handle the case. But the moment the jury thinks that the defense attorney is pulling one over on them, you start losing the trust and faith of the jury, and then it kind of it morphs into all other aspects of the case, so that could be a problem. This Austin fella apparently sort of deal. He got a benefit for flipping, and he's going to bring the jury right into that scene and describe to detail what exactly happened. So it will be very interesting television, to say the least.
Right. And I'm thinking of a follow-up question for you, Michael, please. Harkening back to your time as a prosecutor, with these two, Christopher Austin, the knife man, and Robert Baker, the lover, which of the two would you call first if you're the state of California?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, Baker's their guy. So I'm sorry, Christopher Austin is the one they have to deal with, and he's the one who's cooperating. So certainly he's going to be your witness as a prosecutor. He's going to help your case. Austin's not going to help your case at all. So he would be a hostile adversarial witness. Let the defense call him, let him say what he has to say, and then I think the prosecutor is going to tee off on him and neutralize him at worst. But I think they're actually going to, again, make him their witness and really take a lot of the credibility away from the defense if they do it right.
Right. Great points, Michael. Thank you for that. John Phillips, let me go back to you, please, with Monica Sementilli. How do you think she's being counseled right now when it comes to the big question of, is she going to testify? Should she testify? These two could be wild cards potentially. We don't know what they're going to do on the stand for the state. What would you be saying to her if you're her lawyer, John?
Don't testify. I mean, first you've got to see how things lay out, right? And what is she reasonably going to add to subtract from the state's case? We don't know that quite yet. I don't think it's going to be good. She's you can see her right there. She's very emotional. That's not somebody you want testifying.
Right. Yeah, she's been kind of a basket case throughout this. And then what's coming in is just jaw-dropping. You both know some of the pieces of evidence. You know, our field producer there, you know, in the courtroom gathering some of them, you know, seeing these exhibits, the jury's seeing, and it's, oh, we got to watch what we put on TV. Michael J. Brown, let me go to you here, please. If you're the state of California, how confident are you in this case that you can convict Monica Sementilli?
Julie, I think the evidence is very strong, and it appears to be overwhelming without hearing everything. But remember, we've all been involved in these, and trials can take different routes at different times. So, you know, there's no script to these cases, and things could fall apart. They unravel. That happens, and that's probably happened to all of us at different points in our career. But in terms of the evidence, it seems as though from a circumstantial standpoint, it's extremely strong. And once you add the cooperating witness to the fray, I think they have a very, very strong case. And following up what John said, you know, putting up your client on the stand, that's a decision that the defense will make after the prosecution rests. They don't commit to it. They don't have to talk about it. And they'll make a decision depending upon where they think the case is at that point in time.
Yeah, excellent points you both made with respect to that. And we often see that. Great example, the case we were just talking about, Natalie Cochran, how they were intending to put her up. That was the word we got. We were talking about it. And then when they thought their case was going well, they, you know, pulled back the reins and said, we're going to just wait and let the state prove its case. And they did, but that's neither here nor there. I know we have to end the segment here. Michael J. Brown, we've got to let you go to court. Thank you so much for your time and expertise this morning. We appreciate you. We'll talk more next time. John Phillips, thank you for coming along with us. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we're talking about how the cross is going to go today for the alleged victim in ASAP Rocky's shooting case. Plus, a live look at the courtroom in Florida. We're getting ready for the trial of Colin Griffith. We're calling this one the Deadly Son Murder Trial. Be right back.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Lift me up, hold me down, keep me close.
The felony assault trial for hip-hop star ASAP Rocky is what's trending in true crime, but it's his superstar partner, Rihanna, who's grabbing the headlines. The Grammy Award winner made her first appearance in that Los Angeles courtroom with a big showing of support on Wednesday, but she sat out of the view of the cameras. She was seated in between ASAP Rocky's mom and his sister in the gallery. Security brought her secretly into the courtroom on a path to avoid the crowds, according to multiple reports. And we know her presence there has long been something that's been talked about. There's been a lot of speculation, and it comes at a really critical time in the midst of accuser Terrell Efron, aka A$AP Rocky, giving testimony. So this morning we're talking about why was Rihanna out of the view of the cameras and how her power move of support, which the jury saw, could affect their decision. Let's bring in our power panel now. Still with me, attorney John Phillips. Want to welcome in entertainment reporter and the host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered on YouTube, Kinsey Schofield, and private investigator Manuel Gomez. Good morning to you all. Okay, Kinsey, I want to start with you. Your thoughts on Rihanna, please.
Well, you know, I think she accomplished what she wanted to accomplish without potentially hurting her own mainstream brand. I think there's no debate that Rihanna is the bigger star in this relationship. So she showed up to support her significant other. You know, she was a key factor in jury selection, with potential jurors grilled on whether they were fans of hers. And it doesn't matter if you're a fan of hers or not. You were watching the Super Bowl during that halftime show. You know who she is. But I think that she was there to support her significant other. Apparently, she was noticed by the jurors, according to people within the courtroom. But at the same time, cameras were not glued to her for hours at a time, potentially negatively affecting her brand as an entrepreneur and as an artist.
Right. Well said, Kinsey. I want to talk about the security component to this, because we're not just talking about any star. I mean, she is a worldwide superstar, a billionaire, as you noted, Kinsey, you know, from business and from music. She won 9 Grammys. She's a recognizable face. And is there a threat to her potentially is a fair question, right, that everyone has to think about. So when we think about whether she ducked the cameras, for what reason, you have to think about safety, right? Manuel, this is where I want to go to you, of course. What do you think about safety concerns with a star as big as Rihanna? Did they do this the way they should have done it, getting her in and out with nobody seeing her?
I do believe that the safety precautions were taken to the point where it was needed. But again, like my colleague said, I think her presence there is definitely does influence the jury on this case. And I think the safety precautions, because of her star status, has been taken to the max on this case.
Right. I think it has to. You know, the people who could want to stalk her, get too close, you never know. You just never know. So I can't say, I don't blame her one bit for, you know, going in whatever private way she went in. But really what counts for her, and the whole reason behind it, John Phillips, you know, the effect on the jury. Your thoughts on this from the actually, I want to ask you about both perspectives, if I can, John. Let's start with the defense perspective and then the prosecution's perspective, please.
Even before I get to that, let me add a Rihanna story. So back when I did more entertainment law, I was at an Orlando Magic game, kind of in the back where players' families are. And Rihanna was there. She was dating a player at the time. And we knew Rihanna was there, but I was talking to one of her friends, and I took a photo with one of her friends, kind of making a big deal about her. And Rihanna actually photobombed the photo and came up and introduced herself and was super nice. And that kind of gives you the insight of celebrities. Look, if I had asked Rihanna to take a photo, I'd have been awkward and she'd have probably shot me down. But they get to decide, you know, to some extent, when you get to use them, right? And I think the court situation is that too. She's going to support A$AP Rocky, you know, but she shouldn't have to deal with crowds, you know, all around her at all times, and people wanting to take selfies and use this serious moment for their own, you know, secondary gain. And you know, from a defense, you want her there. You want it. You kind of want that little bit of prejudice she might give, the sympathy she might give and bring. And from the prosecutor, you know, you got to deal with it. It's part of your case. You know, you want to try to not make her a highlight as much as possible.
Right. John, thank you for that story. Please post that picture today if you still haven't posted. That's an awesome story, and she seems so cool. Just hearing that, it didn't surprise me, because that's kind of the vibe I think a lot of people get from her, that she's really cool, and you could see her having fun with the photobomb. Let's talk about somebody who's in the hot seat today, the alleged victim, Terrell Efron, a.k.a. A$AP Rocky. He's going to be crossed by Joe Tacopina today. Wednesday, he finished his direct examination, talked about how he collected the spent cartridge casings after he says Rocky shot at him.
All I know, I went back and found the bullets. I don't know who I know I came back within an hour. I'm confused on what this is right here.
As you sit here right now, do you have any recollection of how long it took you to find these fire cartridge cases after you went back to the scene?
Probably took me no longer than 2-3 minutes.
All right, so how should the defense go after this guy on cross? We're going to talk about it. Manuel Gomez, I want to start with you here, please, because so many people are wondering, did the shooting actually happen? The defense is saying he had a prop gun, that it was blanks that were discharged, and this guy made it up. What do you think?
Well, you know, after analyzing the facts of this case and looking at the injuries, it is clear to me that Mr. Tyrell is lying. His injuries are indicative to someone being in close contact with a starter gun. And the reason why I say that is because on a starter gun, it produces the same muzzle flash and force as a regular gun without firing the projectile. Except if it's close range, it can hurt you. His hand was hurt. His hand was not hurt by a bullet. Now, if you look at those injuries to his fingers, they are not indicative of a bullet grazing. They're more indicative of a starter muzzle flash. Okay, that's a fact. And, you know, I do believe that, you know, ASAP Rocky should be found guilty of assault because he discarded this starter gun. And the reason why, and it is my professional opinion, is because the suppressor of the starter gun was removed so that it would give more of an illusion of being a real gun. But when he pointed at it, Terrell, and grabbed him, then fired it, that gun, starter gun, injured his fingers. You look, that's not a bullet grazing. Trust me, I've seen many of them, and that's not it. That's a muzzle flash burn right there. And, you know, perfect example of a starter gun being used and killing somebody and injure someone is the Brandon Lee, the Bruce Lee case in 1993. And that's because the muzzle flash suppressor was taken off, as it was in this gun, in this case. That is why he most likely got rid of the gun, because he altered it. And I believe Terrell's lying. He was not shot with a gun. He was shot with a starter pistol.
Manuel Gomez, you never disappoint. We love your theories on this show. Thank you for that. Kinsey, let me go to you next, please. The story ASAP Rocky telling. How do you think this is going to be attacked today?
Well, I can tell you online reaction is that fans of Rocky feel like there's betrayal happening. Betrayal is a word that I saw used quite often on social media in his friendship circles. And, you know, the possibility of jealousy towards Rocky from friends riding his coattails. You know, I think if they could paint some sort of motive there as to why he would lie about something, and maybe it is just jealousy and resentment, potentially that might convince some people. But I'm with you. This story does not seem as solid as I imagined it would when you would bring somebody to this caliber to court this way and display it on TV the way it is.
Right. Great points here. You know, this case, this is anybody's case. It really, I see why this went to trial. If this was a slam dunk, we all wouldn't be here talking about it. We've got to leave it there for now because we're out of time. But of course, we're going to follow this as it picks up this afternoon. ASAP Rocky going to be in the hot seat. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.